The names of the seasons. If you've ever found yourself wondering why the seasons are called as they are, well, wonder no more. Winter derives from the Proto-Germanic wentruz, meaning winter. This in turn probably comes from the Proto-Indo-European PIE, wed, meaning wet. Alternatively, it may come from the PIE, wind, meaning white. Either way, the Proto-Germanic wentruz gave rise to the Old English winter as the fourth season of the year, and the name for the season has stuck around ever since. Spring, referring to a season rather than the many other meanings of the word, first popped up in the 16th century. Starting in the 14th century, this time of the year was called springing time, and then in the 15th century, this got shortened to springtime, and then further shortened in the 16th century to just spring. The 14th century springing time came about in reference to plants springing from the ground and the like. Before the season was called these things, it was called Lent in Old English. Summer came from the Old English name for the season sumor, which in turn came from the Proto-Germanic sumur, which itself came from the Proto-Indo-European root sam, meaning summer. Sam seems to be a variant of the Proto-Indo-European sem, meaning together and one. The origin of fall as the name for a season, rather than the more common autumn, is not perfectly clear, though it's thought that it probably came from the idea of leaves falling from trees and many plants, particularly the contraction of the English saying, fall of the leaf. It first popped up as a name for a season in the later 16th century in England, and became particularly popular during the 17th century, at which point it made its way over to North America. Funny enough, calling autumn fall in England has since passed out of widespread practice, but has survived as a common name for the season in North America. This is not unlike how soccer was originally one of the most popular names for the sport in England around its inception and a long time after, which spread to North America, only to have the name die out in England, leading many to believe that soccer is an American name for the sport. As for autumn, this came to English via the Old French automne, meaning autumn. This in turn came from the Latin autumnus, also meaning autumn. From here, things get murky, but it's thought that autumnus probably came from an Etruscan word and is possibly related to the Latin augia, meaning to increase. Beyond that, nobody is quite sure why the season was originally called that. Calling the season autumn in English first popped up in the 12th century, though it was a rarity until around the 14th century. It then began to pick up steam and became common in the 16th century. About the same time, calling it fall popped up as a name for the season. Before calling the season autumn or fall in English, it was called harvest. Incidentally, you may also wonder why the seasons are called seasons. The word season in this context comes from the Old French saison, meaning sowing or planting. This in turn came from the Latin sationum, meaning sowing. Initially, this referred to actually sowing seeds, but later, as with the Old French saison, shifted definition to refer to the time period when you sow seeds, so literally seed time. Season, in this sense, in English, popped up around the 13th century. It was around this time that season popped up, referring to seasoning food, in this case from the Old French saisonner, meaning to ripen. So I really hope you liked that video, and if you did like it, click like below and leave us a comment to let us know what you think. And also check out a couple of our other videos, which are linked to on the screen now, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos every day. Thanks for watching.